In the wildly popular series The Vampire Diaries, there was one particular family that managed to outshine even the main characters in popularity. This was the original family, and Klaus became one of the most charismatic vampires in the hearts of countless young men and women. It was because of this that the spin-off series The Originals was born. A vampire, who supposedly couldn't have children, suddenly finds out he's going to be a father who wouldn't be dumbfounded by such news.
Kill her and the baby.
But he forgot that he isn't just any vampire, he's a hybrid of both vampire and werewolf. This means that for the first time in 1,000 years, the original family of vampires now had a new bloodline. From the moment the soon-to-be unwed mother, Haley, set foot in New Orleans, the story of the original family officially began. At this time, Klaus was still a carefree troublemaker, with his only worry being how to make life difficult for his adoptive son. Elijah, on the other hand, was a responsible older brother, whose only concern was his brother's happiness. Haley, though young and inexperienced, had a brave and kind heart. Marcel, having just broken free from his father's control, was somewhat arrogant and full of competitive spirit.
I even found a way to shut down the witches.
He ruled the city with an iron fist, turning New Orleans into a haven for vampires. Through the introduction of the witch Sophie, Elijah met the young Haley for the first time. Haley was down and out yet wild, her belly already slightly swollen, filled with confusion and fear toward this unfamiliar city. She couldn't understand how Klaus, a vampire, could still have the ability to father a child. Elijah then explained to Haley the origins of the original family. After their youngest brother, Henrik, died at the hands of werewolves, their mother used powerful dark magic to turn her children into vampires to give them the strength to fight back against the werewolves. However, after Klaus made his first kill, his eyes glowed with the golden hue unique to werewolves. It was then revealed that his mother had had an affair with a werewolf leader, a scandal that was exposed to their father. In a fit of rage, he demanded that his wife seal away Klaus's werewolf side, which led directly into the events of seasons 2 and 3 of The Vampire Diaries. Klaus went to great lengths to break the seal on himself, even attempting to create an army of hybrids, but all of his efforts ended in failure. The witch Jane Ann was killed in the streets, the perpetrator being none other than the city's vampire ruler, Marcel. He did this to punish the witches for using magic without his permission. To set an example, Marcel even took away Jane Ann's body, but what he didn't know was that 2 of the original vampires had already quietly arrived in New Orleans. The witches hoped to leverage the power of the original brothers to fight against Marcel, so they held Haley captive and used the child in her womb as a bargaining chip to force Elijah and Klaus into submission. As Klaus listened to his brother and Sophie haggling back and forth, his anger flared up instantly.
How dare you command me?
After a furious outburst, he told Elijah to just kill Haley and the child, then stormed off. But Elijah, with his keen perception, saw in this child the hope of redeeming Klaus. He commanded Sophie not to harm Haley, promising that he would convince Klaus. The brothers had a heart-to-heart on the streets. Klaus believed that this child was nothing more than a trap. Elijah, however, saw the child as a gift. Although Elijah firmly believed that this child could reunite the fractured original family, the stubborn and insecure Klaus gave his brother a disappointing answer.
No.
Klaus sought out Marcel to figure out how he managed to suppress the witches, but Marcel was tight-lipped about the secret. The two of them soon found themselves in a heated argument. Klaus pointed out that it was he who built New Orleans into a great city 300 years ago. Marcel countered that after Klaus fled, it was he who turned it into a vampire haven.
And I'm not the prince of the quarter, friend. I'm the king!
Klaus, not one to be outdone, grabbed a nearby vampire and sank his teeth in. The werewolf venom in his system could kill a vampire instantly, but Marcel was powerless to kill him.
I am immortal.
After making this brazen display, Klaus strode away. As always, it fell to Elijah to clean up his brother's mess. Elijah approached Marcel, telling him that a werewolf bite wasn't incurable. Klaus's blood was the only antidote, but in exchange, Marcel had to return Jane Ann's body. Marcel agreed. Elijah returned the body to the witches, agreeing to form an alliance with them, but warned that persuading Klaus would take time. He made it clear that if the witches harmed Haley during this period, he and Klaus would slaughter the entire city to convince Klaus to accept his own child. Elijah even went as far as to beat up the brother he loved most, but he forgot that he was no match for Klaus, so he had no choice but to sit down and have a heartfelt conversation with him. After this sincere, heart-to-heart talk, Klaus finally agreed to cooperate with the witches. Haley was released by the witches and moved into the room Elijah had arranged for her. Haley confided that she had been abandoned at birth and, after becoming a werewolf, was abandoned again by her adoptive parents. She didn't know how to be a mother.
I will always protect you. You have my word on that.
Klaus, now playing along with Elijah's plan, bit his wrist and handed over his blood to Marcel, saving Marcel's men and thereby regaining his friendship. But Klaus still coveted the supreme power Marcel had gained in the city. Both brothers were convinced that Marcel had a secret weapon specifically designed to deal with witches. Klaus vowed to take back the city, but as the only hybrid in the supernatural world, he had his own unique way of doing things, and he would never allow his family to become his weakness.
Forgive me, my brother.
Klaus didn't regret his betrayal one bit and casually started chatting with Marcel as if nothing had happened. Noticing Marcel's instant attraction to the female bartender, Klaus took the initiative and approached Camille, but she gave him nothing but a cold shoulder. Marcel had no choice but to step up and ask Camille out for a drink. Camille didn't reject him outright, but she also didn't give a clear answer before leaving. Meanwhile, a mysterious female vampire arrived in New Orleans. She was ruthless, swiftly taking down a group of vicious vampires, causing significant losses to Marcel's forces. Marcel needed to recruit new followers, so he took Klaus to an underground garage. A young couple had just drunk vampire blood, unaware that their lives were about to change forever. Marcel pulled out a coin, stating that whoever picked it up would gain immortality, while the other would die. The girl quickly grabbed the coin, thinking she was safe, only for Marcel to snap her neck immediately, and just like that, the bewildered Josh, slow to react, became a new member of the vampire ranks. Klaus took Josh to the van himself, but Marcel got an unexpected call from Rebecca. Rebecca, once Marcel's lover and Klaus's younger sister, was on the line. However, due to Klaus's constant interference, they were never able to be together. Reunited, they didn't exchange many pleasantries. Rebecca was in town to find out what had happened to Elijah. Marcel claimed he had no idea where Elijah was, but Rebecca wasn't someone to be underestimated either.
If I find out you know where Elijah is, you needn't fear Klaus. I'll kill you myself.
Not hearing from Elijah for a while, Rebecca had traveled all the way to New Orleans, bringing Haley along to search the family's basement, where she found the coffins Klaus had thoughtfully prepared for his siblings. Rebecca remarked that this was how Klaus treated his family, advising Haley that she might want to find a chance to escape as well. Rebecca's words alerted Haley, and she secretly approached a witch in hopes of purchasing some herbal remedies to abort the baby, but the witch turned out to be a spy for the vampires, and after seeing Haley leave, she reported the incident to Marcel's vampires. Haley sat alone on a bench, torn with indecision, when a vampire with bad intentions suddenly appeared before her. She tried to flee but was blocked by two more vampires. Fortunately, Rebecca arrived just in time, ripping out the enemy's heart with one swift move. Haley's plan to have an abortion was thus abandoned. As Klaus dealt with the bodies, he grumbled about how Haley had disrupted his plans. Rebecca, unwilling to back down, accused him of betraying Elijah. Only then did Klaus reveal his plan. Since Marcel's followers were all on Vervain, Klaus had to act during their joint venture to turn new vampires, compelling Josh ahead of time to serve as his spy within Marcel's ranks. Klaus, aware of Marcel's interest in Camille, also secretly found her and compelled her to go on a date with Marcel, aiming to distract him and divide his attention. When Klaus had finished talking about his plan, he asked Haley what she was doing there for good reason.
Answer me!
When he learned she went to buy abortion herbs, Klaus, who had claimed not to care about the child, suddenly flew into a rage, grabbing Haley by the throat and refusing to let go. Rebecca quickly intervened, pulling her brother away and urging him to recognize that caring for someone is not a weakness. The siblings finally set aside their grievances. Sitting down together for a peaceful conversation, Klaus finally admitted that he had given Marcel the coffin containing Elijah. Rebecca didn't care about the power games between the boys. She found Marcel on his date and threatened him to hand over her brother. Marcel refused, so Rebecca used Camille as leverage against him. Marcel caved and took Rebecca to a dimly lit attic. Rebecca immediately spotted Elijah's coffin. A 15-year-old girl emerged from the attic and invited Rebecca inside. Rebecca, eager to pull out the dagger from her brother, was stopped by the girl. The girl's name was Davina, a young yet powerful witch. She was Marcel's secret weapon against the witches. With just a flick of her head, Davina sent Rebecca flying out the window. Klaus had his first real conversation with Haley, wanting to know why she hadn't taken the abortion herbs. Haley couldn't quite explain that instinctive maternal feeling, saying only that protecting the child inside her felt like a natural responsibility. The witches saw Haley as a bargaining chip. Marcel and his followers viewed the originals as enemies.
Well, we're backed into a corner now.
That we are. It's time to fight, little wolf.
Marcel secretly ordered Davina to use Elijah to quickly find a way to kill the originals. Rebecca returned home and informed her brother about Davina's existence, but when Klaus asked for the little witch's exact location, Rebecca realized that Davina had wiped the coordinates from her mind. With Elijah in the hands of a powerful witch, the original siblings became instantly on high alert. Rescuing Elijah became an immediate priority, and after plotting for half the day, the grand plan the originals came up with was for Klaus to simply ask Marcel to hand Elijah over. Haley could barely resist rolling her eyes. Klaus did indeed approach Marcel, but Marcel's lieutenant, Thierry, was the first to object. He argued that having two originals roaming the city was worrying enough, and now they wanted to add a third? Klaus didn't press the issue too hard. Instead, he called Rebecca and told her to activate Plan B. Rebecca walked into Katie's shop and, without a word, unleashed a violent assault, actually managing to extract the identity of the witch's informant. It was none other than Marcel's prized lieutenant, Thierry. Klaus also began his preparations in earnest. He captured one of Marcel's vampires and instructed Josh to drain the vervain from his body. Then, Klaus compelled the vampire. Everything was falling into place. Klaus found Marcel and, with just a few words, incited Marcel to suspect that the witches were up to something behind his back. Marcel bought it. He ordered Thierry to take a few men and go mess with the witches, to teach them a lesson. Klaus smiled with satisfaction. To help Sophie cast a spell to find Davina's whereabouts, Klaus and Rebecca teamed up to stage an elaborate ruse. First, Rebecca found out who Katie's vampire boyfriend was. Then Klaus manipulated Marcel into believing that someone within the witch community was causing trouble. Marcel immediately ordered Thierry to lead a team to harass the witches. Marcel's men wreaked havoc at the witches' camp. Thierry, worried about his girlfriend's safety, hurried over to calm her down. He pretended to knock over some bottles and jars in an attempt to play it off. Little did he know, Klaus had already compelled one of the vampires involved in the raid. The compelled vampire quickly bit into Katie's neck, throwing Thierry into a panic. Without hesitation, he grabbed a stake and drove it into the vampire's heart. A grave mistake was made in an instant. Vampires are forbidden from killing one another. This was Marcel's most important rule, and the mastermind behind it all was nonchalantly attending a party. To further distract Marcel, Rebecca even invited his new flame, Camille. Dressed in a white gown, Camille looked like an angel descending into the devil's lair, a sight that momentarily made Klaus lose his focus. Watching Marcel and Camille dance on the dance floor, Rebecca and Klaus both look a little more lonely and isolated. But Diego soon interrupts Marcel's date by telling him about Thierry's mistake. Marcel flew into a rage. Camille, seeing Marcel's outburst, couldn't help but feel disappointed. Marcel wanted to give Thierry a chance to explain himself, but Klaus discreetly pulled out a forged letter and had Josh deliver it to Marcel. The letter contained a spell for making daylight rings, which immediately made Marcel suspicious that Thierry had betrayed him. According to his rules, Thierry, who had killed a fellow vampire, would be buried alive for 100 years before being released. Sophie quickly informed Katie, telling her that her boyfriend was going to be executed and urging her to fight back. Katie believed Sophie's words and blocked Marcel and his men on the street. Meanwhile, in the attic, Davina quickly sensed the surge of magic. Angry and confused, she scribbled furiously on a blank piece of paper, completely ignoring Sophie, who was hiding in the shadows. Sophie was secretly casting a locator spell, trying to find Davina's hiding place under the cover of Katie's magic. Katie's furious magic overwhelmed all the vampires present. Even Marcel, who was powerful, was rendered immobile by her strength. Davina's attention was fully drawn in. Sophie's magic sand pointed directly to a specific location. Seeing that Marcel was about to be killed, Klaus's conscience got the better of him, and he rushed forward, swiftly snapping Katie's neck. Katie's spell was abruptly broken. Sophie tried to continue her spell, but Rebecca tore the map from her hands. They hadn't been able to pinpoint Davina's exact location. This scheme had failed, but Marcel, grateful to Klaus for saving his life, fully trusted him now and decided to return Elijah to him. Klaus, avoiding eye contact, seemed a bit guilty. He sought out Camille once again, asking her opinion of Marcel. When he learned that Marcel's temper had left her somewhat disillusioned, he compelled Camille once more, making her forget the unpleasant parts of the date. Perhaps this was his way of making up for deceiving Marcel. As promised, Marcel went to Davina and told her he was going to return Elijah's body. To his surprise, Davina sternly refused.
I won't give him back until I know how to kill them.